Every time you walk into Selichos, the first night, I always find it to be a bit inspiring. It's 12:30 at night, 12:45 at night, and regardless, those who go to sleep early, usually, those who stay up late, usually they're not sitting at 12:40 on a Motzei Shabbos, hearing some chizik and segueing into davening. And that alone, the fact that we're coming out to daven, and on top of davening, to hear a little bit of inspiration beforehand, is something that we should take stock of and allow it to uplift us. Allow it to let us carry ourselves into Selichos as we will this is like part 2 of Elul. Part 1 of Elul was we began Shofar, L'Davar Hashem, bit of Chizik, a bit of Torah throughout. And now, with a little bit more than a week left, we begin daily Selichos, which will culminate in Rosh Hashanah in a little bit more than a week's time. So in preparation for Rosh Hashanah, we have to understand what we're doing at Rosh Hashanah, which we're slowly adding tidbits along the way. But tonight we're going to focus primarily on the koyach of tefillah. We're going to be spending from now until we can really go till Yom Kippur, hours if you do the math, regardless how quick you daven, every Hashem Hashem, every Hanashamalach, every Hashamnu we're going to say. And what exactly are we doing, and what is the power and potency of each and every word? But really what we're driving towards is Rosh Hashanah, Ki Lashem HaMelucha U'Moishel Ba'Goyim. We spoke the other night about crowning Hashem as king, and we have to realize that La Hashem HaMelucha U'Moishel Ba'Goyim explains the Vilna Gaon. We Yidden create Hashem as our king. Whereas for the Goyim, Hashem is a Moishel, a ruler. What's the difference between a king and a ruler? A famous Vilna Gaon is that a ruler, a dictator, is irrelevant if the constituents, the substituents, the people vote him or not. He's their ruler. He's their dictator. But a king, says the Gaon, is only if the people accept him as king. So when we're going to get to Rosh Hashanah and we're going to HaMelech HaKadosh, make Hashem as king, we are defining Hashem's kingdom, and we're allowing Hashem to be king over the entire world. So what exactly is our tefillah? What is the purpose of our tefillos? What is the koyach of our tefillos? What is the potency of each and every word? So I'd like to start with one incredible story. It's a story that sometimes you hear these stories, you don't really believe them, but we'll hopefully prove it afterwards with some incredible sources, each and every word of what our davening is. Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein one time walks out. He used to give lectures to doctors, he still does, and he walks out and there's a doctor waiting to see him. A doctor doesn't look overly religious. Doctor looks a bit anxious. And the doctor goes to Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" "Sure." They walk to the side, and Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein says, "What would you like?" And the doctor can't get the words out of his mouth. And he opens his bag and he pulls out a sitter, a child sitter. The man's still not talking. And Yitzchak Zilberstein says, "So what's so special about the sitter? Well, why are you showing me this sitter?" And the man still can't really compose himself. And finally and slowly he starts to talk. And he says, "For 15 years, I never had children. Me and my wife, we weren't able to have kids. And finally, after 15 years, we decided we have no choice. We're going to adopt a child. So we went through the entire process. We adopted a child. We never told him that he was adopted. We raised him as our own. We gave him everything. We cared for him. And we put him into a local yeshiva. And when the boy turned 7 years old, they had a sitter party. They gave every boy their own sitter. And we went, as all parents do, and they called up the boy and they handed him a sitter. And the boy took a picture, and we took a picture, and they had a little party, and we went home. And we came home, and the boy was just so happy, smiling. We're so excited. He loves his new sitter. But it was like too much. So we said to our son, "Why are you so happy?" So he says, because I got my own siddur. And he said, okay, but many boys got the siddur. Why are you so happy? And the little boy, 7 years old, turns to his father and says, Abba, now that I have my own siddur, I could daven. And I'm going to ask Hashem for a brother. I always wanted a sibling. And the father turns to his child. What can he tell the kid? The kid doesn't know he's adopted. The kid doesn't know that to have a sibling will never happen. And he turns to the kid and with a heartbroken sigh says to the child, of course, daven. And Amir Hashem, Hashem answers tefillos. And this man starts crying as he turns to Yitzhak Zilberstein and says, that siddur play was 9 months ago. I would like to invite the Rav to a bris. The boy's tefillos were answered. Tefillos, prayers, have the most incredible power that perhaps if only we believed in what we were doing, like a little innocent child turns to his father in heaven, a 7-year-old kid, doesn't know anything. He's taught in yeshiva, you daven. He's taught his father, Hashem is your Abba. You turn to Abba and you ask, like our children ask us for whatever we need and we tell them no and they ask again, and they tell us no and they ask again. And we say, stop asking. And then they turn to us and they say, but you said we could always ask. So we're going to ask again with all the innocence in the world. So perhaps if we believed in our tefillos, like that child believed in his tefillos, maybe we'd give ourselves a little bit more credit. So I heard an incredible line from Ephraim Wax many years ago. We need to have bitachon in our tefillos. There's something called bitachon in Hashem. But why don't we believe in our tefillos, believe in our prayers? So for 2 minutes, let's just prove without the shadow of a doubt how powerful our prayers are. Moshe Rabbeinu, perhaps, well not perhaps, this was his defining and glorious moment. Which moment? The Torah ends with it. What was Moshe Rabbeinu's greatest moment, says Rashi? That he broke the luchos. That itself is a discussion. That's his greatest moment. But right before he goes down, it's discussion whether it was right before he went down, right after he went down. There's a conversation between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu the following words, V'ata hanicha li, and you leave me alone. V'yicharapi, and let my anger burn. V'achalim, and I'm going to destroy Klal Yisrael. V'eseh oischa l'goy gadol. Hashem turns to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, enough, leave me alone. What does Moshe Rabbeinu do? Vayichal Moshe. And Moshe begins to daven. So, the question is obvious. There comes that point as a father that you could say, no, enough, stop. I said no, it's finished. Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, Hanichali, leave me alone, get out of here. So how could Moshe Rabbeinu have the chutzpah? Vayichal Moshe. He continues davening. So the Meshech Chochmah says, look at Onkelos and you'll get the answer. Onkelos teaches us, Hanichali. Leave me alone, says Hashem. Vikan hanoch ba'usach. Do not daven. The word is ba'usach, referring to a certain type of tefillah. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu do? Vayichal Moshe, says Onkelos, vitzali Moshe. A different type of tefillah. What's sali? What's ba'usi? Explains the Meshech Chochmah. This is famous back from Seder Bereshis. That sali is a cherev. Ba'usi is a bow and arrow, is a keshes. What's the difference between a bow and arrow and a sword? A bow and arrow, you pull back, you need precision, and you could strike your target. A cherev, a sword, you do not necessarily need precision. If you have a massive machete and you go straight up to your attacker, it's over. Explains the Meshech Chochmah. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, get out of here. No more ba'usach, no more bakashos. No more bow and arrows. No more tefillah with kavana. No more trying to shoot pointed arrows at me to stop me from destroying Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu responds with a cherev, with a sword. What's a cherev and what's a sword? And the Meshech Chochmah explains what it is a type of tefillah beloi kavana meruba, without kavana. Without kavana. Because the words themselves are the greatest kavana. And what does that mean? And the Nefesh HaChaim explains from no one less than Eliyahu Hanavi. The Nefesh HaChaim quotes in Sharbez, Yud Gimel says, he quotes from the Magen Meisharim, which was a conversation that the Beis Yosef wrote, which was he had with Eliyahu Hanavi himself. And Eliyahu Hanavi tells Rav Yosef Kairoi that when you daven, you know what you should do? Be careful. From what? Not saying having any machshavos. Not having any machshavos. No kavana. No kavana. Ki im b'tevois hatfila atzmam. And explains Rav Chaim Volozhin, doik b'dvarav, look at his words. You know what he just taught you? That don't worry about the kavanas. You could have all the intent in the world, and he says you're not going to even scratch the surface of a tefillah. You could have all the kavanas, and he says even the Arizal himself, but you're not even penetrating what the words mean. So you know what you should do instead? Say the words. And have in mind when I'm saying Baruch, it's Baruch. And Atah, it's Atah. And Hashem, it's Hashem. So of course, there's something called Kavana. And of course, there's something called Pirush HaMilim, understanding the words and depth in Kavana and different types of Kavana. But the Beis Yosef is being taught by Eliyahu Hanavi, don't forget that the words themselves have the most incredible potency. And this is what the Meshech Chochmah is explaining to us, that we have two types of tefillah. You could have kavana, but that's a bow and arrow. And that's sometimes a very dangerous type of shot. Because you have to have perfect precision. Or you could pull out your sword, and you could go short-range combat. And the way to do that is just by saying the words. So we'll conclude with what are the words that we're going to be saying the most over the next, we'll call it 2 weeks. The words of Hashem, Hashem. Those words, Rabbeinu Bachai says that Bizman Hazeh, we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, we don't have a Kohen Gadol. So what do we have? You know what we have, and we don't have a Mizbeach, and we don't have Karbanos. What do we have? Lo nishar lanu lifnei Hashem. Only the Yud Gimel Midais HaRachamim. Those words, which in that conversation that Moshe Rabbeinu had to Hashem, when Hashem said, get out of here, what did Moshe Rabbeinu respond with? Hashem, Hashem. So perhaps as we walk into Selichos, as we walk into the time of year that is going to be the greatest tefillos we're going to say, and there's so much that we need and there's so much that we want. And the Chazon Ish explained, you want to know, should you say Bakashes and Rosh Hashanah, should you ask Hashem for your needs? Yes. Because there's no greater way to connect to your Father in heaven. There's no greater way to show Hashem that you need Him by asking Him for your things. But he used to say, but ask Him for even the smallest of things. Because if you really believe that Hashem is giving you everything, He's giving you the shoes in your feet, he would say as well. So as we walk into Selichos, and as we begin davening, if we were to realize, like that 7-year-old boy, that our tefillos could change the world. And if we listen to the Nefesh HaChaim, and he concludes with the words that every tefillah is a ma'uves lo yuchal atakin. If you miss one word of tefillah, it will never come back. Ma'uvas li'uchal atakin is the words of the Chazal, like a mamzer. It's messed up. It can't be fixed. Every tefillah, explains the Nefesh HaChaim, has infinite power that it was imparted by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, that if you don't say it today, you will never be able to say it again. Each and every tefillah is unique and special. So if we try a little bit, as we say Hashem, Hashem, as we say the Hashem news, as we say each and every tefillah, to realize, have bitachon in our own tefillahs. Realize that maybe we won't be able to have the bakashais. Maybe we won't be able to have the utmost kavana. But sometimes it's even a greater form of tefillah, which is that cherev, which is that sword. And even when Hashem says no, and when Hashem says, Hanichli, get out of here, we respond with Hashem, Hashem. We respond by turning to Him with the beautiful and pure words of tefillah like a child, knowing that they have the greatest and most infinite power imaginable.